virals are here and vaccines are here, and we're starting to be able to have a little bit of a return now to normalcy. But I always put hope there because we get better outcome with kids when we have a hopeful attitude. And that is something that has quite a bit of research behind it. So I'm going to show you the research on how hope leads to better outcome with kids. But let me just sort of go over the plan for tonight, which is I want you to start with an understanding of why our students sometimes have behavioral issues. Like, why are they having a meltdown or falling to the floor or fighting with you, or frozen with anxiety, or exploding with rage? Why is that happening? When we have a better understanding of it, we're able to respond in ways that get better outcomes, right? If we see it as a personal, intentional behavior on that child's part, and we take it personally, we tend to react emotionally, and that often makes it worse, right? We add fire to fire. So part of what I want to talk to you in the beginning today is about how do we manage our own emotions. If you're a parent and if you are a professional, and I'm both, and I've been challenged both ways, but being a parent has clearly been the biggest challenge because it's a 24/7 job. So if we can be chill, as a parent, as a provider, we can help our student be chill, be calm. We'll talk about how do we de-escalate out of control emotions. How do we de-escalate crises with our kids, right? So we'll talk about the art of distraction and soothing and calming. But I don't want you to just learn these emergency tools, what to do when your kid is melting down. I also want you to be able to prevent these problems. And so what we're really going to be talking about this evening and then into Thursday, in my next session, is how to set up prevention plans where you begin to know what the trigger is. What's the thing that sets your kid off or your student off? And so how do you prevent that? How do you sort of approach it differently and maybe build some skills, equip them with the skills to get ready for it? Right? If they have trouble waiting because they're gonna have to wait before they can get on the iPad, do we have a plan to help them to wait? Is there something to make that easier, a way to modify it, like a schedule or something, or a timer? So we'll talk about different prevention plans. Let's talk about how hope impacts parenting and teaching, right? Both. First of all, when we have hope, right, it allows us to see things as solvable, like there's a way to get to a better outcome. One of the things I say to myself over and over and over again is like, all problems can be solved if I can wait and talk to the right person. I teach all my kids that, all my parents, and I have to say to myself at least 40 times a day. There's a colleague of mine, Mark Durand, who did some interesting work many years ago with kids with autism. And he was tracking their behavior from the ages of 3 to 6 years old. And he wanted to see what would be most predictive of how like aggressive or calm they would be in the home. And he thought, well, if they can't speak, if they don't have language, that might predict aggressive behavior, right? Because they get frustrated and if they can't communicate. That was somewhat predictive. He figured, well, if they were really aggressive at 3, that would be really predictive of how aggressive they'd be at 6, but that wasn't very predictive. In other words, parents, professionals, if you have really out of control, emotionally out of control kids, that doesn't mean they're always going to be that way. It's not that predictive, right? The thing that was most predictive was parental optimism, parental hope. The extent to which parents had hope that their kid could get better, that meant they kept doing stuff to make it better. They didn't give up. And what hope meant, what it translated to, and by the way, some of you may have your volume on, so we're hearing background noise. So you've got to turn your button on. No worries, no worries. Lower left-hand corner to mute yourselves. Okay, at least that's what it is on my computer. Coming back to what we were talking about here, what it means to have hope is to say that this really difficult behavior in front of you is temporary. It's not forever. So we have to teach everybody on the team that's working with your kid or your student, the behavior that's so difficult right now is temporary. It's not forever. And it's a specific behavior, right? We give a kid a math worksheet too, and they flip over a desk, they curse at us, they yell. Okay, they don't know how to ask for help, perhaps. They don't know how to cope with difficult work. That's a specific skill. It's not like they're a bad kid, right? Or they're permanently dysregulated, right? There are kids who have a little bit more dysregulation, but it doesn't have to be a permanent part of their character forever, right? There's specific skills we could teach. And the last thing is that we don't take it, that we don't see it as completely on purpose. Like often parents ask me, well, how do I know if my kid is just manipulating me? Like they're just doing it on purpose, or this is really part of their disability. How many of you ever asked that question? Put in your chat room if you ask that question. You know, is this for real? Is this really like their disability, or are they just, you know, manipulating me, right? You ask that question. Anybody want to say in the chat room? And if people don't say anything in the chat room, sometimes I feel like I'm staring at a computer and I don't know that anybody's alive and out there. So to just say something in the chat room so I know you exist.
I'm dealing with that right now. I'm dealing with that.
You're dealing with that now. Yes. Okay. So here's the thing, man. And excuse me for being, you know, saying man and being loose with you here today. I just, I'm feeling like I know you guys because now I can see your faces. So that's good. Here's the deal. It doesn't matter whether they're doing it on purpose or not. You'll never know for sure, right? The reason it doesn't matter is if it's a repeat problem and it continues, then there's still a good reason they're doing it. Let me give you an example. Both my kids had some difficulty reading early on in their life. I had an uncle who was dyslexic, and maybe I was never diagnosed. Perhaps I was, but certainly my uncle, my kids, and so sometimes my kids would get frustrated and it was time to read. They'd melt down, they'd fall on the floor. Other times they just lied to me. They said, I did my reading, and they really didn't do it. Now I could have said, oh, now you're just manipulating me. Well, they were, but why? Because reading was difficult. It doesn't take away if somebody's doing something on purpose or not. Sometimes it doesn't matter. There's still a good reason they're doing it. We have to figure out that reason. So when it's a repeat problem, we're still going to have to modify that work or modify that demand in some way. Okay. And so a better way to think about the problem is not to say to yourself, is this on purpose? Are they doing it consciously, planning it or not? A better way to say is the problem is defined as a gap between the demands we place on that kid and their ability to cope. That's the best way to define it, because that creates a solvable problem. Right? There's a gap between the level of demand we're placing on them, how difficult this situation is, and their ability to cope. And so what is therapy? We're going to teach them a better way to cope. And we're going to modify the demands. Those are two things we can do. Change how difficult the situation is and teach them a better way to cope. So everybody, first step is to get everybody on the team to believe when there's difficult behavior, it's temporary. It's a specific issue they don't understand yet. It's not that they're a bad kid. It's not a character problem. It's not a personality issue. And there's a gap between the demands we place on them and their ability to cope. So we've got to teach them better ways to cope and maybe modify those demands. And that brings us to this issue of discipline. Does somebody have a question?
Yes, I have a question. Right now, my son is 11, and he's going through this whole stage with puberty and stuff like that. And lately, he's been having an infatuation with Pampers, because I have two younger children and a 2-year-old. And I've been waking up in the morning and catching him wearing at least about 6 Pampers.
Wait, hold on, folks. Everybody's got to mute themselves except for the one person who's talking. Otherwise, I cannot hear. Secondly, I'm going to take questions about specific kids and specific questions at the end. I'm going to answer this question since you started. Let me answer your question since you started, but let's save questions specifically about your kids for the end. And let's take any questions about the content of what I'm saying while I'm talking. So go ahead and finish your question. Finish your question.
So I don't know what's going on with him. I don't know how to handle it because he is the first autistic person I've ever been around. Is my own child. So
and you say he's infatuated. You say he's
infatuated. I have a 2-year-old that still wears Pampers, and I'll wake up in the morning and about 3 times I caught him. He did it more than that, but I caught him 3 times. When he wakes up, he's wearing the Pampers. and he takes two Pampers and one in the front, one in the back, one in the front, one in the back, at least 6 to 8 Pampers on top of each other. And then the last time I caught him with that, and then every birthday, well, for the last 2 years of my son's birthday, I buy him a shirt with his age on it. And he had a little onesie that said, I am one. And he literally put that on top of the Pampers, stretched it out, and was wearing it on top of the Pampers.
Okay. So let me just say this. So, and we can come back to it later too, which is that we need to know what that's about for him, right? So how old is he, by the way? How old is he?
I'm sorry, he's 11.
11. Yeah. So, you know, I've had adults who had an erotic transference to Pampers. They found it sort of, they sexualized it, but others just wanted to be a child. They just wanted to feel like a kid. They wanted to be babied. And so it would be, we have to answer the question, which is what I'm getting to in a moment in this talk. You know, why is it happening? When we know why it's happening, we can teach a better way. So if it's happening because he wants to be a child, let's help him and indulge him in a way to have scheduled times to be kid-like, you know, that don't have to involve Pampers. You know, we can call it, we could put it in his schedule, and we could call it baby time, and he just will have a little scheduled time where he gets to be babied, you know, if that's what he wants, kind of thing. Now, if it's a sexual fetish, that's a different story, and that's a little trickier, right? You know, and he's 11, so he's pre-pubescent, so I don't know. But then it's a matter of helping him develop other associations to sexual arousal. So, you know, because we don't want diapers to be necessarily the thing that creates sexual arousal, because it's also associated with kids. So that's not a good idea.
Yeah, and I don't think it's a baby thing because he has a 9-year-old brother that came before the baby. He never did that. This is the first time he ever showed this. He never did that. And his brother, they're only 2 years apart. His 9-year-old brother, because he's only
yeah. All right. So let's come.
He doesn't want to talk to me about it.
Yeah, he's verbal.
No, he doesn't want to talk about it. He shuts down. Just the other day, I had to call his counselor because he had a bad breakdown.
Oh, gotcha. I'm going to come circle back to you, because if I don't, I'll never be able to get through the material.
All right, thank you.
And I want you to hang in and make sure I address it again. We'll try to address it again at the end. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. So where we left off here was just the issue of discipline versus educating, right? If we say it doesn't matter whether someone's doing it on purpose or not, we have to understand why it's happening, right? Discipline, traditional discipline, are like consequences, right? I mean, let's take the question we just had, right? You know, some parents would just say, well, you're using you know, your brother's diapers, and we don't want you to do that. We'll punish you. We take your iPad away, right? That's a punishment. Now, for some kids who are well-regulated kids, that works just fine. You know, you can use a consequence. But for kids who are not well-regulated, who get upset, have meltdowns emotionally, often, you know, a punishment just makes it worse and escalates the problem. You start taking things away, they start, you know, having more meltdowns, and it just escalates. Okay. And so at that point, we have to ask the question, why is it happening? And that's what, you know, the answer to your question is, we're just going to have to, you know, we might have more questions to try to figure out why it's happening for your son, because without knowing what function it serves, why he's doing it, harder to figure out how to treat it. When we know why something's happening, and for me, a lot of what's happening is related to the trigger, right? What's the first link of the chain? Like, when does it happen? Under what circumstances do things happen? That gives us, as well, like we're being detectives. It gives us some information about why something might be happening, right? I mean, just to give you an example, we'll go back to your kid, just since you brought it up. You know, what if generally it happened right after he saw you with the baby, and that made him jealous? Let's just pretend, you know, I don't know. Or it happened at a time when he had some stomach upset and some digestive problems, and all of a sudden he's wearing a diaper, and maybe there's some reason for that because he doesn't think he can make it to the bathroom or whatever. We need to look at the trigger. We need to see if there's something that sets it off. Okay. And then we can alter that trigger and teach a better way to deal with it. I'm going to show you this brief video of Super Nanny. I don't know if you ever watched Super Nanny on television, you know, and I'm showing you this video because I actually don't love what she's doing here. Every Super Nanny video has in it timeout, basically. If kids don't behave, she sends them to timeout. She's British, so she calls it the naughty zone, the naughty corner. I don't have a problem with timeout if it works for some kids, but for dysregulated kids, kids who get upset a lot, timeout can make things worse. And in fact, if you're trying to avoid doing a task, like a kid is avoiding doing homework and you send them to timeout, well, then they didn't have to do their homework. So it can make things worse. So I want you to see this and, two things. Number one, what do we do if timeout doesn't work? We'll talk about that. And number two, how does mom handle her emotions? That's the first thing we wanted y'all to think about today is how do you handle your emotions? How did mom manage what's going on with her little son, Joseph here, who she's trying to get into a timeout for like 90 minutes. So we're going to see like a quick look, 3-minute tape here. Take a look.
It didn't take long before I was showing Karen and Jason exactly how to use the naughty zone.
Ow! Karen, deal with that, please.
We were in the living room and Joseph hit his sister, and when Mum gave him a warning, he swore at her and then spit right in her face.
Daddy's warning. Right. Come on. Right, Joe, listen. To level. Watch this. He spits in your face. You bring him in and you say to him, you do not spit at anybody because that behaviour is unacceptable. Do you understand? Now you stay in this room.
Joseph was not given in to the naughty zone.
Oh, don't wait!
And then all of a sudden he peed in the middle of the floor like a dog.
I want an apology, Joe. No! I want an apology. No! Right, if he doesn't get one, we go. Let's go. Now, if he can't say he's sorry for that behaviour, then he stays in here. Yeah? Close the door and put him back in. Go and get him. We've done again. Ignore it. In the room. Ignore it.
I can't believe this 4-year-old has just given his mum the finger. It's just disgusting.
We've got a lock on the door, so why can't we just lock the door and keep him in there for his defined time?
You can't lock your kids out to control them.
Whilst Joseph was in the naughty zone, Ben swore at his mother, and then she had to place Ben into another naughty zone.
You come out, Ben, when you stop swearing, OK?
No sooner had she got one child into a naughty zone, the other one had come out of theirs.
Back in the room. Now, come on.
There were times when Mum was really struggling to make the naughty zone technique work because the boys were pushing the technique to the extreme limits.
Ben, what did I say to you?
Guys, Jesus, stop me.
Ben, in there now.
No!
When I saw the two boys escaping from their respective naughty zones, I knew Karen would need my support to enforce the technique.
You know, it's ridiculous. Right, one child, one room. Karen, you're stronger than him. Pick up your young son.
Joseph got so angry at one point that his tantrum had worn Mum down, and she was just about to give up, and so I intervened.
That was a big relief to me because I really felt like I was getting support. I was very impressed with how she dealt with Joseph.
I'm not too convinced that Karen can continue it. I think the desire to do it is there, but I don't know if she'll be able to do it.
He's 4 years old. You're now in charge, and not him.
It's incredibly vital that Karen learns to manage two children in two different naughty zones at the same time.
I want you to say sorry first, Ben, and you can come out.
Sorry.
Come on. No more swearing, OK?
Very quickly, Ben had learnt to realise and take the consequences for his actions. Joseph's rebellious behaviour had lasted for an hour and a half before he gave in and realised that Mum was in charge of this situation and not little Joseph.
I want you to apologise to me for your bad behaviour and then you can come out of the naughty zone.
Karen does have a lot more work, but she's taken the first step, and that's a milestone for Karen.
Josie went in and out quite a few times, but it was a lot less stressful than shouting at him, and I didn't feel so wound up. Hopefully it can only get better from now. Go and get a drink now and we'll make some cakes.
All right, that's traditional discipline. Maybe that works okay if you have a typical kid who who's logical, he understands something like timeout will happen. But in my experience, that's not working so well sometimes for some of our kids who get dysregulated quite often, who aren't always so logical, right? In fact, sometimes it escalates the problem. And so we've got to ask, why is it happening, right? So like in this video, why is Joseph acting like that? Well, what's the first link in the chain? What's happening? The first thing that happens before he hits his sister in the ankle is what he did, is mom's not paying attention to him. She's paying attention to the daughter and super nanny. They're kind of ignoring the boy. And so, super nanny's there for him to begin with. So he makes sure he gets into the act. If ignoring is the trigger, then we suspect he wanted some attention for that, right? We got to look at the first link and take a look. Now, if he wants attention, rather than sending him to timeout, well, maybe he just needs attention at this time of day. Maybe he's tired and dysregulated, needs a little attention. Maybe we've got to teach him a better way to get attention, right? That's what therapy is. Hey, you don't have to hit your sister. If you want my attention, just say, I need you, mom. Maybe mom will say, but I'm going to put it on a timer. I'm going to work with your sister for 3 minutes here. When that timer goes off, say, mom, I need you, and we'll come play a game. So she's teaching him a better way to get attention, not to hit the sister. Okay. And that's what, the other question, well, that's what we want to do, is teach a better way to handle it. But the question I ask you is, what allows mom to manage herself? What do you think? Put it in your chat box or say it out loud. What do you think allowed mom to even handle herself? What's the word of the day? Hope. That's right. Cynthia wrote it. Hope. Hope is what said to her, okay, this is ugly what he's doing, but now that super nanny's here, I kind of have hope. I have hope that we're going to get to a better way to do this. It's hope that allowed her not to lose her emotions, to lose control. We lose control as parents. We're tired. We work 4 jobs. We come home and then our kids acting this way, and we don't have the patience for it. But when you have hope things get better, we have a little bit more patience. So let's understand better what's going on sometimes for kids when they're dysregulated like that, right? Our brains have lots of parts to them. One part is called the limbic system, which I call the Incredible Hulk. That's an emotional part of our brain that reacts to threat. When we feel threatened, and threats can come in lots of forms. We could feel like there's a life-threatening thing happening, or we could just feel there's a threat to self-esteem. Somebody insults us, criticizes us, or work is too difficult. It's a threat. That limbic system goes into fight, flight, or freeze mode, right? We're ready to fight, we're ready to run away, or ready to just shut down, okay? That's an automatic emotional reaction. That's not a thought out reaction. Animals have that, reptiles have that. The Incredible Hulk is a primitive part of our brain, just ready to react to threat. Now, the forebrain, this part of the brain up here, is the thinking, reasoning part of the brain. And that's what allows us to solve problems. When we are threatened enough, though, sometimes we don't do that thinking part of the brain. We just go into the emotional limbic system, Incredible Hulk part. In other words, the Hulk hijacks the rest of the brain. We actually need that, you see, because if a car was coming to hit us, we don't want to engage in a big math problem and a physics equation to figure out the vector and miles per hour that we should, try to avoid the car. We actually just want the primitive Incredible Hulk to get us the heck out of there. We need that alarm system. However, some people have an alarm system that goes off a lot, like false alarms. And when they're in that Hulk stage, they're not particularly logical. And so does it help to go over to the Hulk and say, hey, dude, if you don't stop, I'm going to, shoot this military assault helicopter bullets into you. Like, that doesn't help. You can't, if you threaten the Incredible Hulk, you just get more Hulk, more fight, flight, or freeze. So when your kid is the Incredible Hulk, which can be outward aggression, fighting, or it could be the anxiety, depression, freeze, running away. We don't want to add threat at that moment. That's why it escalates sometimes. What helps the Incredible Hulk, people? Write it in your chat box. What helps the Incredible Hulk in those moments of meltdown, frustration? What actually helps the Incredible Hulk? You've seen the movies, Marvel Comics. What or who helps the Hulk? Love. Claudia says love. I love that, Claudia. Love is it. But love from whom? Who does he love? Black Widow. Cynthia said it. Black Widow. Scarlett Johansson. We all love Scarlett Johansson. And why? Because she's an attractive actress from a previous episode, and he trusts her. He trusts her. How do we all become an attractive actress from a previous episode? That our kid trusts us, that we approach them. They don't feel that we're going to punish them, yell at them, scream at them, but they know, okay, mommy's going to make this better. My teacher's going to make this better. Dad's going to try to figure this out. They're going to help me. That's what we need to do. And so when our kids are in that emotional crisis, and what does that look like? What do we do for the Incredible Hulk? Management of the Incredible Hulk, right? Number one, don't threaten them further when they're in that state. Again, you know who you can threaten? A logical kid who's fully Dr. Banner, thinking logically. You could say, if you do that again, you lose your iPad for the whole night. That kid gets it. But the Incredible Hulk, they're not thinking, they don't get it. They're just ready to beat you up or run away, or run out the house. So what do we do for them? Sometimes we step away, right? And kind of let them cool down. Just kind of don't get in their face. Sometimes we listen to them, ask them what's going on to show that we care. We want to hear their side. You know, why did you hit that? Why did you hit your sister? Well, she took the last cupcake. It was supposed to be mine. Okay, well, you're right. She shouldn't have taken that. It's not okay to hit her, but you're right. Listen and agree with the part that's true, right? You are right. She shouldn't have taken that cupcake. That's validating. That'll calm them down a little. Apologize. I'm so sorry she took that cupcake. Now, it's not okay to hit her, but I'm sorry she took that. And then the next step, collaborate. What does that mean? It means teach them a better way to get what they want. Hey, look, you know that cupcake your sister took was rock hard, nasty, stale cupcake anyway. I can get you a good cupcake, but you got to do the right thing. First of all, you need to apologize to your sister, and I'm going to work with you to get a good cupcake. Now, what if it's a less verbal kid, right? You can't just talk to them. I had a kid who every maybe 5-7 seconds into playing with other kids, he would just take an item and throw it. And sometimes it was big and dangerous, like a stapler. And so I began to realize that he would get bored or he wanted to play something else. He didn't know how to communicate it. So just as he was going to become the Incredible Hulk, I had a little photograph choice board, and I prompt him, I want, and I'd have him point to the picture, continue to play the same game, play a different game, or go to his break area or go get a snack. And so he could choose to communicate in a different way by pointing to the picture, right? We were teaching him a better way to cope rather than throwing items across the room. Sometimes it's too late. They become the full-blown Incredible Hulk. And when they become the full-blown Incredible Hulk, they're not willing to pick any of those photographs. They can't talk to you. I don't care that you're going to get me a good cupcake. I'm going to kill my sister. I don't care what you say. Well, that's when you think of distraction as your crisis tool. It says it up there. When logic is gone, think about ways to redirect and distract. I have 3 categories of things I think about to calm and soothe and distract my clients. One are novel items, things they've never seen before that would grab their attention. I remember having some less verbal kids, and they were fascinated by, sometimes I'd bring in different scents, cinnamon, vanilla, chocolate, just little scented oils and things they could smell, and that got their attention away from the thing that was bothering them, or musical instruments they've not heard before, or gold coins I got from a trip I took to Slovenia where I did a talk there. Just something they've never seen before, got their attention. Special interest. Well, these, as my colleague Barry Prezant, I think he might have presented for you guys. Mark, right? I talked to Barry the other day. He told me he presented at District 75. Barry talks about, kids on the spectrum have passions, interests. Those are often self-regulating, calming things. Like he has a famous example in his book of a kid who was fascinated with license plates, all the license plates for all the states. And just being able to look at his book of license plates was calming and soothing, right? And then the third category are sensory issues, activities, I should say, things that give you different sensory input. So obviously the sense would do that, but often for a lot of my kids, snack does that. All of a sudden they're in a mood, and it's, the commercial, does somebody need a Snickers bar? You ever seen that commercial on TV where somebody's really upset and somebody says, does somebody need a Snickers bar? Just sometimes, a certain a snack or listening to music or taking a walk, a different sensory experience can calm somebody down. Now, that's an emergency tool, these ways of soothing. Behaviorists, do I have any behaviorists out there? Because if I do, some of you are going to be worried, rightfully so, that if I give them their special interest, their book of license plates, and that's what they love, won't that reward a tantrum? Is anybody thinking that? Right? They're behaving their worst, meltdown. So if somebody's trying to avoid doing a task like homework or classwork or cleaning up, and they're yelling and screaming, and you say, oh, let's get you calm. Let's just, watch your SpongeBob video together, right? Well, that might reward a tantrum. So what I would rather do, if somebody's trying to avoid doing something, is teach them to just, ask for a break. You don't have to tantrum to get a break. Just say, I need a break, right? So we're going to teach them, or the less verbal kid can give you a break, please, a break card, right? We hand a card that says break, please, okay? Or we simplify the work. So if you had, 10 dishes to put in the dishwasher, you know what? Let's just put 5 away and then we'll take a break. Okay, we'll simplify it. So it's okay to soothe, but if they're trying to avoid something, see if we can prompt them to ask in a nicer way or simplify the task. This is not an issue at all, though, rewarding a tantrum if they're upset because, say, you went to the market, they didn't have the candy bar your kid wanted, they're throwing a tantrum. And what you do is, instead of punishing them, you put on their favorite, music and have them listen to it with their headphones, and it calms them down. Does that reward a tantrum? And I would say, no, you didn't give in. You didn't run to 12 stores to run and get them the candy bar because they're tantruming. You just had them listen to music to get their mind off of it. That example is a pure example of how you can calm kids rather than punish them, right? That's the concept, guys. Think about, how do I soothe and calm my kid, not punish them, okay? But you don't want to just, use distraction as a crisis tool all the time. We don't want to put out the fire after the fact. We got to get ahead of the problem. And so that's when we think of, how do we develop these prevention plans? Okay. I'm just monitoring the chat box to see. Somebody called it redirection. It's a kind of redirection. Yes, it is a distraction away from the thing that's upsetting them. But prevention plans are different. Prevention plans are when we ask, and I don't see the name of the person who asked me the question in the beginning, but I do see your face. So
I'm here.
What's your name again?
Amanda.
Oh,
I'm here.
Okay, Amanda. So, because I just wanted to refer to you. So, Amanda, like, for your kid, we want to know why he's doing what he's doing. And so sometimes what we ask is we observe the before, during, and after of the behavior. That might be a little trickier in your situation than in other situations. But what I mean by before, during, and after, behaviorists call it antecedent behavior consequence. Before the behavior occurs, what happened beforehand? What was the trigger? What set it up? And what happened afterwards? And we kind of keep a little journal of that, and we then try to do our detective work. It is easier to figure out what the trigger is And to me, the trigger is the most important thing because it tells us what to do differently, right? It's easier if I give you a list of possible triggers. And so I'm going to show you a list of triggers. This is a map. It's not the same as the territory, but I'll give you a perfect example of it. Amanda, an easier one than yours. Yours is complicated. We're gonna keep coming back to it. But there was a kid I had who wouldn't get on the bus in the morning to go to school. It's actually a kid up in Canada that I was working with, and he was less verbal, so he couldn't tell you what the issue was. But this is a list of possible triggers that I want you to consider when wondering why your kid is having these issues. So internal issues are things like hunger, tiredness, illness, right? In your case, Amanda, another internal issue could be hormonal. If somebody has puberty's coming on, I don't know if that's the issue for your son. And so another issue are, well, why do we suspect an internal issue? If you see a problem across multiple settings, everywhere that kid goes that day, they're having more problems, you figure it's an internal trigger. There's something inside the kid that's off today. Like they're starving, they're tired, they're cranky, they're ill. Everywhere they go, they're having more problems. That's just, you suspect an internal issue. Sometimes it's a sensory issue. There's something in the environment that is offending them from a sensory point of view. Too much stimulation. For many on the autism spectrum, that's the case. For kids with ADHD, it's not enough stimulation. Like I'm sitting here lecturing today. Well, kids with ADHD can't hear me just lecture and talk at them all day. They need to get up and move around, right? So boredom could be an issue, not enough sensory stimulation. Well, it turns out the kid on the bus had an internal issue. He would, for one thing, anytime we found out that when he really had trouble on the bus, the night before he hadn't slept and he was really tired. And not only was he tired, but when he overslept, he was late for the bus, so he didn't eat breakfast. So now you put a kid on a bus who's tired and hasn't eaten. What else? Well, he's screaming and yelling all the time on the bus. I went on the bus to check it out. The bus was horrible. It was hot, it smelled, and it was loud. It was a sensory overwhelming situation. So we gave him noise canceling headphones. We made sure he was fed. We addressed the sleeping issues with melatonin and making sure that he wasn't napping when he got home from school, which was preventing him from going to sleep in time at night. So we got a better night of sleep. So those were some triggers. Lack of structure could be another trigger. What is lack of structure? For a lot of our kids, it's a lack of a visual schedule. Like what visual supports to know what you're supposed to do and when you're supposed to do it. I mean, I think a perfect example of that is like kids who can't wait for things because when you say no, they think it's the end of the world, but maybe they don't realize they can get it in 30 minutes. They just need a timer to understand that or a schedule to know we do this, and then you get that. Challenging work can be a major trigger, right? When you have a difficult work task in front of you, or you have a phobia or fear of insects, fear of getting COVID. A lot of kids I have now, fear of COVID, right? So I'm going to talk to you about that. I mentioned this before, having to wait or not get what you want immediately, or a change in schedule is a disappointment. You didn't get what you expected. That can be a major trigger. Guys, these are triggers for you to just, print this out. Okay, we're going to get you the PDF version of this so you can print out this handout. But this is an important map, right? Threats to self-esteem, things like losing a game, making a mistake, being criticized or being teased. That could be a trigger, right? Unmet wishes for attention, right? Not getting the attention you want could be a trigger. So coming back to you, Amanda, I don't know what it is for your son, but one thought I had was, okay, is he not getting attention? He's jealous of the baby. You said probably not that. Could be an internal issue. Is it hormones and there's some sexual attraction to the diaper? That's an internal issue. Could it be a sensory issue? That something about the diaper, the smell of it, the feel of it is comforting. And so when he's dysregulated, he uses it to comfort himself. That could be an issue. But maybe it's some of the other issues. Maybe it happens after a frustrating task, or it happens when he didn't get something else he wanted. So we have to look at what those triggers might be. When you know what the trigger is, you could put together a better behavior plan. So the trigger, the behavior plan would involve, how do you modify the trigger, teach a better way to deal with it? And how do you I mean, two things. How do you modify the trigger, and how do you teach somebody a better way to cope with that trigger? We're going to talk about the three that are highlighted here: lack of structure, difficult work, and dealing with disappointments today. We're going to talk about it as it relates to COVID. And then tomorrow, I mean, Thursday, I'll talk about it in more detail as it relates to lots of other situations. But by now, we're well over a year with the COVID pandemic. So I imagine you've done some explanation with your kids and students about what COVID is and the need to explain why we need to be, wear a mask or be vaccinated and so forth. The Autism Society of America has a nice picture story. I put the link up there if you want to explain it to your kids. But when you explain that to them, a lot of kids are anxious, right? Will I get COVID? What'll happen to us? A lot of them are frustrated that their activities were canceled. I have a lot of adult clients who actually had to go home from their group homes and their group programming that they had. And kids who are certainly annoyed that they're sitting at home doing Zoom classes, which is nowhere near as engaging as in person. So let's talk about anxiety first, the anxiety piece. It's important to educate kids and adults for that matter, if they have COVID, if they have fears of COVID, right? That your anxiety, false alarm, fire alarm that you have, that that incredible Hulk limbic system that goes off, mimics some of the symptoms of COVID, right? You get tight chest, difficulty breathing, sweating. And so you might be thinking you have COVID when you might just really be having a panic attack. And so it's important to educate people that your anxiety alarm system causes shortness of breath and it's temporary, right? I remember early on in the pandemic, I got a oximeter just to make sure my oxygen was okay when I was having trouble breathing, which may have just been allergies at that time, and certainly having them now. So we want to educate people about the alarm system, certainly if they're verbal kids. And again, for verbal kids, what we want to do is help them think like a scientist to combat their worry. So I had a kid who wouldn't go outside because of COVID, right? Here's the issue. He wouldn't go outside. He felt he'd get COVID. He felt if he had COVID symptoms, if he got COVID, he would die from it. Those were the two worries. And so we did what we call think like a scientist to evaluate those worries. And when we think like a scientist, we ask two questions. Two questions are you overestimating the probability of something bad happening? Are you overestimating the severity, right? So what's the probability that you'll get COVID? Well, if you're vaccinated or you wear a mask and you're 6 feet away and you're outside, it's pretty low, okay? Are you overestimating the severity? Well, one of the reasons our death rates have gone way down in the United States now is because the most vulnerable people were our older population. They're about 70% vaccinated. It's very rare for young people to have severe illness from COVID. It's not impossible, but it's very rare. These two questions, overestimating the probability of something bad happening, or are you overestimating the severity, they help us take a scientific look at things. So we use this with our kids and our anxious folks to help them get over unrealistic fears. And the goal is to help them face their fears, face things that aren't dangerous. So for this kid with COVID, with fears of COVID, we didn't want him to go indoors and eat at a restaurant being unvaccinated. But what we did want him to do is just be able to get out of his house, get out of his room. He wasn't doing that. Go outside with a mask, take a walk. And so we set up a little, what we call gradual exposure. Break it down into small steps, which we'll talk more about next week as well. But we couldn't get him out of his room, out of the house at first. We just got him out of his room, and we got him standing by the front door, and he got a reward for it. And then outside the front door, hanging by the front door, he got a reward for that. And then maybe standing outside for 5 minutes, he got a reward for that. And then taking a walk with a mask outside, got a reward for that, and slowly facing his fears, right? So how did we do that? We have him think like a scientist so he could face his fears, but we also did some biological things like exercise reduces anxiety. Any kid I have who's anxious, I want them on an exercise program, 30 minutes of aerobic exercise, very, very useful in reducing anxiety, okay? So is meditation. What is mindfulness meditation? It's being able to focus in on the moment. There's a free website. All of you can use it, www.fragrantheart.com. That's a free website that you can download these little, 7-minute, 8-minute meditation guides. And so great for kids who have pretty good language. They can listen to it and focus on their breathing and contracting and releasing certain muscle groups. But for kids without language, without much language, there's a song called Weightless by Marconi Union. I'll type it into your chat room, your chat box here. Weightless is the song by Marconi Union. There, I just put it in the chat box. That's a song that was used in a British study, and it was proven to reduce your blood pressure and reduce your anxiety, just listening to the music. And they have a really nice YouTube video of waterfalls and things like that. So if you go into Google and you type, Weightless by Marconi Union, you're going to see this nice YouTube video, and just watching it has been shown on average to reduce blood pressure and calm people down. But so are your interests in your the things you love to do, right? So for kids who love to collect Pokemon cards, that can be meditative for them, right? Medications also can reduce anxiety, and they don't have to be a lifetime of medication. Sometimes we just take a medication long enough to get us to face the fear. And once we face our fear and realize nothing bad happens, we can get off the medication. Okay. So those are a couple ways that we think about handling anxiety. Tomorrow, Thursday, I'll talk to you about ways we handle it for other kinds of issues. Today, I focused on anxiety about COVID. The other thing is difficulty waiting for things. So I'm going to talk to you more about it Thursday, but I'm going to talk about it in terms of COVID right now. A lot of people have had to stay home or not do the activities they normally did because of restrictions due to COVID. So I had a 35-year-old guy living in a group home. He had to go home and live with his aging parents, and he couldn't see his girlfriend anymore. And the parents didn't want him to see his girlfriend because they were afraid that they would kiss and then he would bring back COVID to them. And so what did we do? What we had to first emphasize that staying away from his girlfriend in a way was being a hero, because he was helping her to stay safe, helping his parents to stay safe. He didn't really care about his parents. He said, I just want to see my girlfriend. Well, we said, yeah, but who do you care about? Your girlfriend. It also helps her be safe, right? We gave him alternatives at that time, which originally was that he could, video chat with her. And he could do some other things that he couldn't normally, he couldn't go to restaurants at that time. So he was ordering food out and other things. But eventually the alternative that we gave him was, before the vaccines came out, if he got tested and the two of them quarantined for 2 weeks, then they could get together. Now they're both vaccinated, and I'm happy to say they're back together. So that's nice for him. When logic fails, and it did for him sometimes, you couldn't convince him to wait to see his girlfriend or wait for that 2-week period or wait for the vaccination. Sometimes we just had to pop his favorite television show on, favorite video game, and just redirect, distract him. That was our crisis tool. When you're doing remote learning, one of the things that's so different is that there's less structure at home than at school. There's often less space. It's crowded. There are lots of other kids sometimes. Having a visual schedule can be very helpful. Photographs of the different things that you're going to do during that day. And I think it doesn't have, you don't have to, abide by it in some kind of rigid way, but a good visual schedule for home includes a full life, like some schoolwork, which isn't going to be the same as a whole day of school, right? Some social life where maybe they can play a game with somebody online, or a Zoom chat with somebody online potentially, or with the family or other family members, some kind of physical get up and move your body exercise, and some kind of sort of home routines where we maybe cook meals together or play games together. The hardest part of this is getting kids to do work from home. How do we get kids to do schoolwork, which generally is not a preferred activity? Usually what we do is we use rewards, right? We say, look, do your math and then you can have playtime on your, iPad. So that's a typical way, right? Is to use a reward. But what's equally and maybe even more important is not to get a reward after work, but how do we make the work more pleasant, right? Not that you're going to get a reward afterward. How do we actually make the work more pleasant? Well, how do we make it fun and less scary? One of the things we do is just shorten it. So if you have, if a kid is getting ready for a Zoom class, it's going to be 40 minutes. Sometimes we tell the kid, I just want you to be on here for 5 minutes and then you can take a break. Sometimes by the time they're there for 5 minutes, they're willing to stay for 10, 15 or longer, but just shrinking what they have to do so it doesn't look as intimidating. How do we make work more fun? Well, when we're in school, we get to do more hands-on activities, but we could try to do it at home too. So just sitting on a Zoom class all day is not so good. But if Zoom was an instruction for parents to then go cook with your kid for a math lesson, and you're going to have to follow a recipe to cook brownies, that's a much more fun activity to learn how to add, subtract, divide, and multiply. Mark has, your esteemed leader, right? Mark, our host, has talked about, as a speech and language therapist, some really fun activities to get early readers to learn how to read and write by hiding different words in the house, a scavenger hunt of words. And if you put it together, it makes a sentence to say where a prize is hidden. That's a much more fun reason to read, than just reading from a handout. The 80-20 rule refers to giving kids 80% of what they can do easily before the 20% that is difficult. Sometimes kids need to experience success first. If they experience failure too quickly, they won't do anything. So sometimes we purposely give them the 80% of work that's really easy to do before the 20% that's difficult. And the last thing I want to talk to you about with this is what we call growth mindset. We have to teach them Carol Dweck's growth mindset concept. And I'm going to say it Thursday too, because it's so important. But basically the idea is you're teaching kids that if they don't understand something, it doesn't mean they're dumb. Kids often feel, and adults for that matter, feel stupid if they can't do something. And we have to teach them that you're not supposed to know things in the beginning. You learn it over time. And that's what we call a growth mindset, right? Let me see if I can show you better what that means, right? It means learning is something that you do over time. You grow over time. Carol Dweck has showed that the way kids think about their intelligence can lead to more or less motivation. So the not so good way to think is what she calls a fixed mindset. The idea that you're born with a certain amount of intelligence. And if you're born that way, what that means, if that's the way you think, you're just born with a certain amount of intelligence and it doesn't change, right? It just doesn't change. When it comes to picking what kind of task you want to try, you do things that are easy. You don't want to pick something hard because you don't want to make a mistake because that'll make you feel stupid, right? Because if you think your intelligence can't change, you don't want to make a mistake because mistakes would say, oh, guess I'm not so smart. You don't want help, especially special ed help, because then you think that means you're not smart enough. People like that have lower learning outcomes then. They're not trying hard work. They quit after they make a mistake and they're embarrassed to ask for help. But if you teach kids to have a growth mindset, that your intelligence changes over time. How? By trying things you don't know how to do, like trying something hard, which means you're going to make mistakes, maybe lots of mistakes, but mistakes will teach you how to learn. Mistakes are going to help you focus on the thing you got to do better. And then how do you get better? You get help. Somebody teaches you how to do it. Somebody explains it. Mistakes and help are how you learn. People like that have higher learning outcomes. They're trying difficult stuff. They continue to try after they make a mistake and they're willing to get help. So what we teach kids is to basically have that growth mindset, right? All of our verbal kids need to know you're not dumb if you can't do stuff. Now, less verbal kids also learn how to try. They can have a help me card. We don't force them to do something they can't do. We just show them how to do it. We model it in front of them at first. Okay. They can have a a break card. So they give you a break and then they come back and try it again. So we're going to go over more of this late on Thursday too, because this growth mindset is such an important concept. I want to just show you a little bit about the transition back to school issue. My colleague, James Ball, has written a PDF workbook on sort of helping kids get back to school from remote learning. And one of the things he does is he says, let's try to imitate the school schedule from home. So you get used to the routine, right? And part of that is also used to wearing a mask if that's going to be required of them in school. And so I put a link here of a video lesson for mask wearing from cincinnatichildrens.org, and that might help you to teach your kids how to wear a mask. And part of that is also getting the kids who have all kinds of sensory issues to find a mask that's comfortable for them. Like during the height of the pandemic, before the CDC said people like me who are vaccinated don't have to wear a mask, I was trying to sometimes wear a KN95, but it would hurt my ears. So I took a rubber band and a paper clip. And so it wasn't attached to my ears. It was just attached around my head. And from a sensory experience, it was much, much better. So we just need to think about that for kids. What's going to be more sensory friendly for them in terms of the mask they choose. We think about creating these video sessions with a safety person. Scarlett Johansson, Black Widow, someone they trust. Who's the person at school, whenever there's a problem, they feel safe and they can go to? It would be good for them to develop a little video chat with them before they go to school. So they know that person, they know what they look like, they know they can count on this person if ever there's a problem. And then, we count down to the time we're going to go back to school. And then I would say, if you're the classroom teacher, when you have a kids coming back to school for the first time, do the most fun activities to begin with. That is, make coming back to school a positive experience so they want to come back, and we move gradually towards difficult work, but we start with the most fun. So that's all I wanted to kind of go over in today's session. I left a lot of time so we could have some Q&A. So I'm happy, and I can also move on to tomorrow, Thursday session a little bit, but I'd rather take some questions. So Amanda, are you still with us? Oh no, Mark, did Amanda leave? I'm going to cry if she did.
So I could have sworn I saw her in there. She is.
Oh, you're back, Amanda?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm listening to everything you're saying.
Okay, great. Hey, so Amanda, can I ask you some questions to help? And then, and while I'm talking to Amanda, guys, I want you all to think about questions you have about any particular kid. We'll look at our map of triggers, see if we can navigate a prevention plan.
Jed, Sonia also has her hand up. So Sonia, even if you want to drop the question in the chat box while Jed is addressing Amanda's question, I can do that as well if you like.
Okay, so Amanda.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, Amanda, back to you. So tell me a little bit about what you're seeing your son do, if there's any trigger. What's he doing with the diapers?
All he's doing is putting them on. I don't see no triggers. He'll be just fine. Days before, he'll be fine. That day, how I notice it is that I wake them up in the morning. So my my 9-year-old, I wake him up at 8 o'clock. Gio, the one I'm having the issues with, his name is Giovanni. I wake him up at 8:20 because he goes on class a little later. They do remote learning.
So when he wears the diaper, go ahead.
Yeah, when he gets up in the morning, 3 times I call him, I noticed there was a bulge because he doesn't like wearing shorts. He likes to just sleep in no shirt and underwears. So I'm looking, and I started looking, and I noticed a bulge is going all the way around. So he's covering it. Yeah. And he's trying to grab something and cover himself. So I'm like, Gio, what's...
Go ahead. And what does he say? Does he talk? Does he have language? Is he someone he's conversational or not so much?
No, he's conversational. He talks, oh my God, and so you blue in the face.
Okay, so what's he saying to you about the diapers?
Nothing. He won't talk to me about it. I called his counselor. His counselor tried to talk to him about it. He won't even talk to her about it.
Oh, okay. Well, and and by the way, don't give off your last name just in case, for his own confidentiality's sake, because otherwise he's going to write a book about you later in life. You're going to make $1 million, is what my mom said at a conference. No, I'm kidding with you. But but nevertheless, when he's wearing the diaper, what's he doing while he's wearing the diaper?
Sleeping.
Pardon?
Sleeping.
He's sleeping it on.
He's sleeping. So he's not touching himself. He's not trying to stimulate himself.
Not that I've seen. What he does, I notice, is he waits until we all go to sleep and he notices so everybody's asleep and then he'll do it.
Well,
So I don't.
does he have a history of enuresis, which means bedwetting?
No.
He does not. Do you know if he soils the diaper in any way? Does he urinate in the
He does.
diaper or defecate in the diaper?
When I have him take it off, I check it before anything. No, he doesn't soil it. Nothing's on the pamper.
And does he have any other symptoms of OCD or anything like that? Where he's very rigid or scheduled in certain ways, or does he have any germ phobias, anything like that?
No, Geo's, or you never know what you're gonna get from him. He's, 1 minute he's excited, then the next minute he's thinking about something that he's seen on TV that made him sad, and the next minute he's fine all over again.
Let's talk about what he's seen on TV. What's he watching? Because he may have been seeing somebody in diapers on TV too, and he may be.
Yes, that's another. I think he's seen it at first on a cartoon, because how I first started noticing also is on his computer. When I go to his history of what he's been doing, it shows he's been looking at cartoons wearing Pampers.
Like what kind of cartoons?
Any type. It just says cartoons wearing Pampers, and then the first time I seen it, it said celebrities wearing Pampers. But what I didn't understand is he had to do it through the speaking thing, the little how do you call it? Like when you say what you.
Yeah.
Because he can't spell yet. So at first I thought, first seen it, I was like, no, he's not looking at this. Maybe it's something that just popped up because he can't spell diapers.
Yeah. So some kids, just see stuff on television. We don't know what came first, whether he searched it or first he saw it on TV and then he searched more of it. But a lot of times, especially kids on the spectrum, can be like tape recorders. They just see something and they just imitate what they see. It's a routine, but have you done any instruction with him about, at a certain age, we don't wear diapers anymore kind of thing? Has that had any impact on him?
He tells me he understands. His counselor spoke to him about it. We even removed the Pampers because he shares a room with his 2 other brothers.
Is one of the brothers in diapers?
Yes, it's a 9-year-old and a 2-year-old. The 2-year-old is the one that wears the Pampers.
Does he share a bed with any of them or no?
Is
he sharing a bed with any of them or just a room?
No, just a room. They all have separate own beds.
Okay. Do any of them have any bedwetting issues?
No.
Okay. Well, I assume the one in diapers.
Yeah, of course he wears Pampers. Right now we're trying to potty train him. I even took the Pampers out the room to maybe help him out. But the other day I had to we went out, and when you come back late, you try to put everything away. I left 2 Pampers in the pamper bag, and the pamper bag was in the room.
Okay,
so next morning I caught him again with Pampers on.
Yeah. So let me just say this. The first step is don't shame him for doing this. Have a neutral attitude about exploring. You're not in trouble. I'm not mad at you. It's okay. Let's just understand it, because otherwise he's not going to give up what's going on and what he's thinking about. Okay. And once he knows that he's not in trouble, you're not going to punish him. We just want to understand it. Then you may be able to give him a better way to get whatever it is he wants. So maybe he wants to just imitate a funny show. Well, then let's watch it. Let's draw cartoons about it. But we don't necessarily have to use the diaper, because if I assume he only does it at home, or does he do it outside? Does he wear it outside of home?
He doesn't go outside.
He doesn't go
outside the house.
Ever? No, I mean.
No, if I take him to the park, it's different, and we go to like family's houses, but I catch him before he ever gets anywhere with the pamper.
I understand.
Once in the morning when I wake up for school, that's when I catch him with it on.
So
I don't allow him to continue.
Yeah. So step one is to have this completely non-judgmental attitude where you just want to understand it, and you're not mad, no punishment, whatever. And then of course, if you've already been upset about it, then you got to kind of repair that a little bit with him and say, "Mommy, sorry, I didn't mean
Yeah,
to be mad. I just."
because I was raised very old school,
Uh,
in a Sicilian family, and I was never, like I said, I was never brought around, children or even an adult with my son's condition. So we were raised that boys don't do things like that. So when I first found it, yes, I reacted,
yeah.
a certain way, and I did punish him. I did make him buy his brother another box of Pampers with the money he had in his allowance, because he took at least 8 to 12 Pampers at one time.
Yeah, well, that of punishments, that's not a bad one because it's sort of logical, right? But
Mhm.
I would just go back and just say, look, I didn't mean to be mad at you, but I just want to understand it, and then we can have some multiple choice. Are you doing it because you want mom's attention and want to be babied and you want to feel like a baby? Are you doing it because it's funny and you saw it on TV somewhere? Are you doing it because it feels good? There's something that feels good about it. Are you doing it because you don't want to have to get up, go in the bathroom in the middle of the night? You figure you could use the diaper in case you have to go, right? Why are you doing it? And so whatever the reason is, we're going to give them a better way to do that, right? So if it's like,
And we tried too. I told him options with the counselor, and he's still saying it's none of it. He's not telling me anything. He doesn't want to talk to me. Don't want to open up. Even the counselor tried.
yeah, but he's afraid of being in trouble for it. So, he's hiding it. So like you got to first just create the atmosphere where he'll give up a little bit of what's going on. And he's got to be assured, no punishment, no judgment. Let's just understand it. It's okay. I just want to understand it so that we figure out, what we want, what we can do with it. You probably, I would even say you're probably doing it for a good reason. There probably is a good reason. Like, we don't want him to think he's crazy for doing it. No, there's a good reason. Let's figure it out. And then let's give you a better way to get that. So I'd
Jed?
start. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. We have two other parents with questions.
Yeah. So you said Sonia and it looks like Andrea, right? So who should we start with, Mark?
Sonia has been waiting. I know that her question is her son is afraid to go outside, and he is reporting that there are germs outside.
So it's kind of like what we talked about now. So what we're going to do, let's see if I have something I can share with you. Is it COVID related or just this was before COVID? Sonia, if you're there. Did this happen before COVID, before the COVID germs, if you will, or that this was just always the case? Well, either way, Sonia, as you're typing or you're going to respond, the key is to get them to gradually face the fear, right? So when someone's afraid to do something, we don't have them do the scariest thing first. So he's afraid to go outside. So have him go by the front door. You get a reward for that. Have him go outside, holding the door, get a reward for that for a minute. Have him take a walk down the step, further, a reward for that. But you first have to address some of the anxiety. So that's why I'm asking you if it's COVID related, because if it was COVID related, you could do something like this. If you're afraid of germs, that you'll get COVID, you can talk about how low the risk is. And for a lot of kids, I just say, let's think about what the scientists say. Let's look at what the scientists say and go talk to a scientist,
Yes, I did speak to him already. I explained him that it's safe to go outside. We can wear a mask. When we come back, we're going to wash our hands. I'd used many material, and he's still afraid of going outside. He said there are germs outside, and he wants to be safe and sound inside the house. I tried many videos, stories, material, and still nothing is helping. He doesn't want to go outside at all.
Gotcha. So that's an anxiety issue. And so break it down, right? Just start with being by the front door. Just start with putting a foot outside the front door. Start with then, I don't know what the situation is where you live and how you could do that. So I don't know if you
I
have
live in
to.
a second floor, yes, and he cries. He just cries. He says like, no, I don't want to go outside. I don't want to.
Yeah, so
then
don't,
he
you're not
says,
going to force him, but what you want to explain to him that is you want to, let's go back and look at what we do with anxiety. First, you want to educate him. He's having an alarm reaction, but it's a false alarm. His body is saying, danger, danger, I might die, this is bad. But all the scientists have said it's a false alarm. It's okay to be outside with a mask. And how old is he, by the way?
He's 10
He's
and
10
he's verbal.
and
And
he's
he's
verbal.
verbal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and soon this summer he might even be able to get vaccinated if you want to do that, and then he's really super safe. But so I think what I would say is you teach him that this is his body's telling him it's danger, danger, but it's a false alarm, and the only way he'll know that is if he does little steps and finds out nothing bad's happening. But this is hard to do, so you're not going to ask him to just go right outside. That's too much. You're going to say, just go by the door first. Just put your foot outside the door into the hallway first, and each time you do it, because it's so hard, I'm going to give you a reward for each step you do. And so this could take a while, Sonia. Don't expect this to happen where all of a sudden you're going to get him outside in a day. Maybe one day he puts his foot outside the door. Maybe the next day he sits in the hallway for like a minute, and you time it. And even if he's crying, but he's willing to do it, you don't want to make him do it. You want to convince him to be a partner with you in facing his fear.
Jed?
Okay.
Yeah.
Sonia, just to let you know, it's so ironic that you had mentioned that, Sonia, because we had a student in one of our schools who had the same issue, and it goes back to what Jed is talking about. So what the parent and the coaches worked with was they had the child put down blue painter's tape on the floor, and then they would put like a tree down, and that was the special tree. And then the child would stand there for a certain amount of time, for however long they felt comfortable. And then the child would move the tape to where they felt comfortable next. And they would slowly inch towards getting closer to the door, because one of the biggest takeaways was helping the child to feel that they're in control, especially if they are anxious.
That's the key here, because if you force your child to do it, the anxiety goes up. So you're trying to be in the spirit of, what are you ready to do today on the fear ladder? How far are we willing to go? And you're going to get a reward for it. What are we willing to do? You want them to sort of, you're trying to convince them to cooperate in facing their fear as they're ready at their pace. Now, you can also incorporate exercise and some of that, like listen to the Weightless, the fragrantheart.com tape. You can also maybe record what the medical doctor said, that it's perfect, it's 100% safe. You could play a little tape, on your phone, a recorded message that the doctor has said it's fine and safe to do that.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Sure thing.
And last, we have Andrea.
Let's see. My daughter uses avoidance mostly with schoolwork and won't verbally engage with teachers. She refused to do any homework since December. Yeah. So there's a couple things there. First of all, Andrea, do you have a sense of, is it all work, or is it certain work more than others, like language arts versus math versus, because we want to understand if there's a learning challenge in one of those areas, something that's more challenging for her.
It's in every area.
In every area. And when you say she doesn't participate, besides not wanting to do the work, is she also embarrassed to be seen on a Zoom class? Is it a Zoom class, more or less?
Yeah. She doesn't like them, but and I have to actually put it on. I'll have to click on the thing, otherwise she will not. And then they'll talk to her, and they'll ask her questions, and they're so happy to see her on, but she very, very rarely will respond verbally to them. Very rarely.
So So there's two separate issues in my mind that I'm wondering about. So one is I want to avoid difficult work because it frustrates me. That's your basic sort of issue of just not wanting to do work, which requires us to kind of modify the work until it's a little bit easier and offer rewards for doing it, kind of thing. But the other is just an anxiety issue about participating sort of publicly on Zoom. I have a lot of kids who are really uncomfortable with that. Like somehow the classroom, they could kind of sit in the back and not be noticed. But sometimes on Zoom, like your face is right there and they're worried that everyone's looking at them. So for kids like that, I've done a gradual exposure kind of thing, a fear ladder, where first we had them with the video off, and then they would turn the video on, and then they would maybe I'd have them just nod or shake their head to respond to a teacher. And then eventually we'd have the teacher, cooperated with us and was able to tell us what questions she would ask. And then we would prepare our student with what questions would be asked and maybe have a 1-word response, then maybe a 2-word response, and rewards for gradually facing each step of the ladder.
What kind of reward are you talking about?
Well, the rewards that you would use is whatever is rewarding to your child, and that might be when you use external rewards like this, it's best to have a menu. And so the reward could be, maybe how old is she?
17.
Oh, and verbal and conversational?
With me.
Oh,
with me.
Jed, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Would she be diagnosed potentially selective mute? Is she not conversational with others?
No, it's gotten more so. It's gotten more so over the last couple of years, but she usually was, she would talk to, she would be shy a little bit, or I don't know if the word is shy, but she would be a little slow to respond to others, but then she would, especially if they used humor, she would, respond like that.
Yeah, but what Mark's saying is these are descriptions of a type of selective mutism, which is generally an anxiety disorder of speaking. It's kind of a social anxiety. And so we treat, for someone who can talk but won't talk in certain settings, we treat it as an anxiety disorder, and we set up, a stepped approach of trying different things. And so the reward might be, maybe she likes a video game, maybe she likes snacks, maybe points towards earning certain things on a reward menu. So when she gets enough points, she can turn it in for something on that reward menu. So I'd have a variety of things that she could pick from, and she gets points for different things she's willing to try. But I'd also do, like I talked to Sonia about, a little education with her, that she's having a false alarm reaction, like she's having an alarm, like feeling like it's bad to talk or something bad might happen, but that's really a false alarm because this teacher likes you. And you have to determine whether the kids are positive too, because if any kid is there teasing or making negative comments, this is not going to work.
I have seen that where they are very supportive.
That's
very supportive with her, and happy to see her when she'll put on the video. But what you had said before about the fail, being afraid to fail, even when she answers, if they don't hear her right away, I could see there's a big change. Like, she tried to respond and she tried to be part of it, but they don't know that she's doing that. And that.
Can she type or no?
She doesn't really do that. No, she just would rather speak when she does. But so one time, a couple days ago, she did answer a question that the teacher didn't hear. So I said it. And she said, well, I hear you, but I didn't hear Catherine. Almost like, I don't know.
Doing it for her. So you got to talk to, you got to talk to the teacher about what's happening, which is that we have to be so encouraging to your daughter that the response we want from the teacher is, oh, that's so wonderful. I'm sorry I didn't hear you. Right. That's got to be the response. So, because any negative response is going to make her take 5 steps back. When you have
what it seemed like. That's what it seemed like.
Yeah. So your instinct is right. You can respond for her. You can have her, if there was something she could whisper into a speech to text kind of thing, that'd be another way for them to hear her, or she could, we might just have to work with her.
Another thought, Jed, might be
Get right up into the microphone.
Yeah, and if she is whispering or has low volume, another thought, sort of Jed was talking about motivates her or what motivates her. Is she motivated by any of the peers in the classroom? Does she have any friendships with any of the children who are on Zoom with her?
She did when she was in the class with them. Yes.
A thought might also be if the teacher could develop a breakout room for her with one of her peers, and the teacher could then potentially task one of the peers as a peer leader or a peer mentor to work with her in a breakout room, which might then lower the anxiety and allow her to kind of build that one-to-one, so she would know the expectations a little bit more, so she would be part of whole group learning. But then if she had the choice to go into a smaller breakout room, if she was comfortable with that, that might be an option for her.
That sounds like a good idea, because I remember the first time we were on a Zoom with, I forgot if it was Girl Scout, I forgot what it was, but it was so overwhelming. She just was, she had to get away from it. She's more used to it now because all the kids don't talk at one time. They're all on mute and then they talk one at a time. It's easier that way, because when it was everyone talking, she just had to get away from that. But that's a good idea. I think I'm going to ask the main teacher about that.
Okay, great.
So what you might end up from this discussion is thinking about creating a fear ladder. I may actually have one I can just share with you if you wait one sec. I'll do it. Are you going to be here Thursday?
Yes.
Great. I'll show it to you Thursday. But just you're going to kind of write down different things that might be worth different points towards rewards, like nodding yes or no. And it could be in different settings, in the small group setting, and maybe lower down or higher up, if you will, on the ladder. The harder thing to do would be like talking in a larger group discussion. But the smaller thing to do would maybe just one-on-one with the teacher, or with one friend, as Mark was saying. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Claudia, I know that you are asking a question as well. And Ellen, I know we are unfortunately out of time, but please bring your questions with us, or with you rather, on Thursday for Dr. Baker's amazing webinar series. We are always excited to have him with us. And Dr. Baker, we want to thank you so much for your time, your expertise, your wisdom, your ability to support our families and our school communities during this time. And please, everyone, join us on Thursday. If you do have any problems with the link, I believe we corrected that problem. But if there are any issues, know that, Felicia, that's a good question. There are 3 different links that were sent out in the invitation for Dr. Baker. So it is a different link for Thursday and a different link for the following Wednesday. What I will do is, if anyone needs the link again, I will drop my email into the chat for you right now. And you can email me and I'll make sure that I get the link out to you.
Hey, Mark, can I take 30 seconds to answer Claudia's question?
Please.
About your daughter likes to play with lotions, and she's on the iPad, and then all of a sudden she's looking for lotions. This is an interest, a passion. Schedule it. A visual photographic schedule. Maybe use a timer. She will be more willing maybe to not look for lotions if she knows exactly the time and the place where she can look for lotions. So we'll go over that tomorrow a little bit. I mean Thursday. But
come back tomorrow.
I'll still be here in my home office. But nevertheless, Claudia, that's sort of what we do when people, are continually doing their obsessive interest, is we schedule it. And then it's easier for them to stop it for a moment when they know exactly when they can go back to it. So we can follow up on that Thursday.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very, very much, everyone. It was a pleasure having you all, and we will see you on Thursday.
Thanks, guys. Great
Take care,
questions.
everyone. Stay safe.
All right, see you Thursday.
Take care.